You're listening to a proud member of the FightFans Radio Network.
All right, brand new episode, FanAddicts MMA Show. I am your host, Erica Lewis. Today is Friday, July 13th, 2012. We got so much to talk about today. It is ridiculous, but the more we have to talk about, the better the show is, at least in my opinion. I've got my co-hosts here, David Wolf and Justin Cohey. What's going on, guys?
What's up, Erica?
Chilling.
How's it going, guys?
Good. I'm still a little jet lagged from coming back from San Jose. That was a little ridiculous flight. I get to actually schedule my flights, and I just was not thinking when I did it, and I ended up I left San Jose yesterday at 12:25 in the afternoon, and I got home last night at 11:55 p.m. So
that sucks.
Yikes.
I mean, the time difference is really kind of what screws you up there, because it really was only like a 7-hour flight, but the 3-hour time difference, and it's a little bit too much for Erica to handle, but whatever. Yeah, I'm talking about myself in the third person. Whatever. All right, guys. So much to talk about today. But let's start off real quick. And I caught a little bit of a repeat of UFC tonight last night, and some interesting information about Chael Sonnen. If nobody heard about it, Chael Sonnen's camp threatened to appeal the decision in the fight he had against Anderson Silva at UFC 148.
Yawn.
Saying that the knee was illegal. Chael Sonnen did tell Ariel Helwani the knee hit him in the face. But that at the end of the day, ultimately it was the referee's call. He has decided not to appeal it.
Unfortunately, the photographs show that the knee landed in his chest.
Yes.
And the thigh touched his face.
Yeah. And probably in the heat of the moment, it's probably hard for him to differentiate between the two. It probably all just kind of hurt in general.
You would think. Actually, and yeah, I got kneed in the head, or I thought I got kneed in the head, and it turned out to be a shin. And I had no idea.
Yeah, so, that kind of stuff happens. And Ariel Helwani asked him about what his next move is, and this is something that we've discussed on the show. We discussed right before 148. If Chael Sonnen loses, this is his second title fight in 2 years. What does he do next? And he is contemplating a move to 205. So, what are you guys' thoughts on Chael Sonnen's potential move to 205? Is it a smart move for him? And how competitive do you think he'll be in that weight division?
David, do you want to go first on that?
Well, in terms of could he be competitive with John Jones, no. Whether he could compete against the rest of the division, he's a pretty big guy with a good wrestling base. I could see him doing decently against mid-level competition and maybe even some of the outer limits of the top 5. But as far as getting past John Jones, that's not going to happen. I don't think he'd beat Machida, Glover, Teixeira. That's not going to happen either. But he could. I think he could be competitive in the division. I don't think he'd be right now he's the number 2 185 guy in the world, or maybe after this loss at worst 4. And I don't think he'd be that high level light heavyweight.
Right. Justin, do you agree? Do you think that at 205 that he won't have the same kind of dominance that he has at 185?
Well, the weird thing about, we've talked about this time and time again, is how top-heavy 205 is. He could, easily surprise people and beat guys like, we've seen Rogerio Nogueira not do well against wrestlers, both in the Phil Davis and the Ryan Bader fights. So I think, that's a fight I think Chael Sonnen could win. Chael Sonnen against Ryan Bader might be pretty interesting. Chael Sonnen said some pretty nasty stuff about the Nogueiras and Machida, so I think that's a fight you could set up, and I think Chael would be actually fairly competitive in a fight with Machida. I agree with David. I don't know if I don't know if anyone's really in the spectrum of beating John Jones at the moment. I wouldn't mind seeing Chael Sonnen versus Dan Henderson. I think that's a good fight. I don't know. Pretty much like David. I think he could probably crack maybe the top 5 in 205, but would he be number 2 or champion at 205? I don't think so.
And that seems to ultimately be his goal. I mean, every fighter that really should be their goal is to one day be champion. And if anything that was sincere in the build up to the Anderson Silva fight, there was a moment in the prime time where he said, he would get, there were things that he would give up just to be champion for one day. And I think that was probably the most sincere statement that Chael Sonnen has uttered since he became this kind of pro wrestling-esque trash talking fighter. And I truly believe that is ultimately, of course, what he wants to do. But so people he face.
Maybe Mark Munoz. Mark Munoz after this past Wednesday night.
Yeah,
what's going to happen?
We have a horrible connection today. I don't know what is going on.
See, I'm not crazy about seeing.
Yeah, our connection is just really awful today. Everybody is Skyping out pretty awful. All right, guys.
Really? Yeah, I'll hang up and call it back.
Okay, good deal. All right, go ahead, David. You were saying about...
Well, I was suggesting Mark Munoz. I think Mark Munoz against Chael Sonnen is an interesting fight right now. Both guys coming off pretty big losses. And they were going to fight at one time in an interesting matchup. Two guys with strong wrestling bases.
Yeah. And I agree. But, and we'll talk about... dang it. Son of a bitch.
We'll talk about Mark Munoz.
Yeah, we'll talk about Mark Munoz and Chris
Munoz against Chris Weidman.
A little bit, but I think Chael Sonnen against Mark Munoz would be interesting. But just by the way that Chris Weidman was able to take Mark Munoz down at will, I really don't see it a different result. I think, and I've been saying this for a while, I just don't think Mark Munoz is as nearly as good as people were trying to make him out to be.
I agree with you 100% there.
On the standings, is Kohi here? Kohi, you there?
Yeah, can you hear me okay now?
Yes, absolutely. On the USB, good God, SB Nation consensus rankings.
She's dyslexic. We're sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It happens. He was listed as the number 3 welterweight in the world, and not welterweight, middleweight in the world, and that's ridiculous under Chael Sonnen. I think that the UFC was putting a lot of stock in Mark Munoz, especially since this expansion, and they want to move into the Philippines, and they're going to Macau, and they're trying to build up this Asian fighter database that they can use overseas.
Resist making any type of slurs
or racist statements. Okay,
please.
I mean, I don't have anything else to say then after that.
Well, I think
thank you.
It was just a weird thing how they, Mark Munoz, did okay at 205 for a while. A lot of people are forgetting that Matt Hamill beat the shit out of Mark Munoz. Yeah, it was several years ago, but he stuffed every one of his takedowns.
Wow.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Completely dominated him in the stand-up.
Yeah.
People aren't remembering that. And so to say that, I'm not saying Weidman isn't going to be a huge star in the weight class, because I think he is. But I don't know if, thrashing Mark Munoz is something that needs to be taken into consideration into that. I mean, Yushin Okami, I thought, won all 3 rounds against Mark Munoz in their fight. Munoz is good against, he's beating the people he should beat, the guys he can take down and, like he says, Donkey Kong punch.
Yes.
But I don't see him, reaching the top of the division or fighting for a championship anytime soon.
No, and I actually think that he's probably peaked at this point. I think this is the highest that he'll probably get in his career. It's obvious his takedown defense, even though he can take down other people, and still, even at that, his MMA wrestling isn't that great. But he obviously can be taken down fairly.
It's better than his stand-up.
Yeah, he hits really hard. He's a really nice ambassador for the sport, that's for sure. He's a really nice guy. He's a nice-looking guy, very respectful. He's got some really good credentials, and that helps the UFC image-wise. But in terms of his abilities as a fighter, I think he's rather limited. And that's not to say that I don't think he's UFC caliber. I think he would demolish anybody in Strikeforce, but I just don't think that he'll ever quite be. He might be top 10 middleweight just based on his power and his wrestling ability and being able to take down guys who don't have good takedowns themselves. But I don't think he'll ever quite get back to where he was now, where people had him kind of inflated at number 3 in the world. So, but back to Chael Sonnen moving to 205, and let's just kind of segue from there to Forrest Griffin. And we heard about Forrest Griffin, and he had TRT exemption for his fight against Tito Ortiz. And David, you tend to be our resident expert on steroids and performance enhancing drugs, and I don't know why, and I don't ask questions. But
where'd you learn that? Drug school?
Drug school. But
come on. I think the situation illustrates what a joke this whole thing is.
Do you,
how many exemptions are there? All these guys are suffering from low testosterone levels. And I guess how old is Forrest? It beggars belief to really accept this, and the whole situation is the system is being gamed by numerous people at this point, and you have exemptions swallowing what's supposed to be the rule. And we've discussed before where I think this whole situation is very hypocritical. Either let the guys do what they want or don't. I mean, the whole idea that you test normal levels on fight day is outrageous because it doesn't tell you anything about what's happening beforehand. And even with normal levels, steroids are performance enhancers. Even if it allows you to train harder than you otherwise would, it allows you to recover more quickly. The whole thing, it just boggles my mind.
What's crazy to me is in relation to the whole TRT thing is what we've heard other fighters come out and say recently. Like David, I had no idea that that Forrest Griffin had gotten an exception until you told us a few minutes ago. Nate Marquardt, who's fighting this weekend, said it wasn't worth going through the hassle of getting the exemption, filling out the paperwork, and doing all the testing. So he's off of it now.
And he's still fighting.
Which is asinine because once you start it, you do it for life. And Chael Sonnen's coming out and was like, if I don't have TRT, I die. And so, I mean, it's just like, we're hearing extreme polar opposite responses to this TRT. It was like, well, it was nice to have it, but I don't really need it, so I'm not going through the hassle. Well, that's BS because if you start it, you do it for life. And Chael Sonnen saying, well, if I don't do it, I just flat out die. Well, that's not true. That's just not true. And it just goes to show, like David says, how crazy and how out of control this whole TRT thing is. It's just a complete freaking mess.
It is. It seems like everybody and their sister are getting TRT replacement. Get it with the sister. Okay. Anyway, but
I probably will look for it.
That would be a little strange. But
my body's not producing enough testosterone. Oh, that'd be awesome. Cyborg Santos, the first female granted a TRT exemption. Tell me how great. Hey, Tommy Tohold, are you listening? We need that on next week's show.
Yes.
You a Cyborg saying that
We're
she's
full of
got
great
the
ideas.
TRT exemption.
We're full of great ideas here, Tommy. You need to
Please.
We feel free to borrow some of our ideas.
We're welcome.
Copyright FightFans Radio.
Copyright FightFans Radio. So, do you think it's cheating? Bottom line, yes or no? Do you think it's cheating?
I don't. How is it? You know, how can it really be considered cheating if it's the system that's allowing it?
Yeah.
You're going through the proper channels. The whole thing is so ridiculous. It's a game to begin with. Test normal on fight day, and do what you want the rest of the time as long as you get it out of your system. You don't really know how many guys are using, but you know they're adults, and at this point, how many fighters do we have with exemptions? Such a large percentage of fighters are apparently suffering from a serious condition. I'm sorry for laughing. I don't know what else to do.
I'm not sure you are sorry for laughing, but
I'm sorry for laughing because it's so ridiculous. And I'm not someone that thinks drugs have to be ruled out of the sport. I just think you can't have this hypocritical field here where, you know, okay, drugs are bad, we're creating exemptions, and now we have at least, we're probably coming close to 7 or 8 fighters that we know have been granted exemptions already, including, and I like the guy, but this just demonstrates the absurdity of it. Todd Duffy, who looked like he belongs on the stage at Mr. Olympia. I mean, that doesn't happen if you're suffering from low testosterone, even with testosterone replacement therapy. You don't end up looking like you belong on stage at, you know, among the elite bodybuilders of the world. At you know, in his early 20s, I believe. Right. And so there are theories that extreme weight cutting could lead to lower testosterone or getting concussed. But I think these are, I don't know, excuses covering. It's obvious what's going on. Fighters are gaming the system. And I don't know what's up with Nate Marquardt. And I'm not sure that you'd have to be on it for life. But clearly, if you think you need it to fight, you would think that your performances would be lacking when you're not on it. So we'll see how Nate Marquardt performs tomorrow night. Yeah. When he's on testosterone replacement therapy. You know, Nate
Marquardt, he blocked me on Twitter.
He blocked you?
Oh, wow. We're moving up in the
world.
Yeah,
wow, he's on the rag. Wow, that is
it was back like right when he got fired.
That's thin skin. Let's just say that's thin skin for a pro fighter.
Yeah, he said something. I guess he was like thanking all the people for like supporting him with like that hashtag that was like bring Nate back and all this kind of stuff. And I said something along the lines of it's like people, you do realize that like this bring Nate back crap is like completely stupid given the fact that he was given every chance in the world to fix his mistakes, and he kept screwing up and essentially broke the rules and is a cheater. Like, I don't know why you're supporting this. And he blocked me on Twitter.
Look at you, Kohi, causing trouble all over the interwebs. I kind of like it. That's funny.
There goes our interview with our chances for interview
Nate.
We're looking into that. Gracie scratched that one.
Man, can you believe if we ever got anyone on the show or on Tethered who was actually on TRT?
Oh, that would not be good.
No, that would not end well. Not end well at all.
No, it really wouldn't. I'm imagining it would end up with them hanging up very angrily.
Excuse me, but how small are your balls right now?
Did your penis shrivel up as a result?
The penis does not shrivel. The balls shrink, but it's not permanent.
Is it the balls shrinking, or is it the penis getting bigger? Maybe that's what it is.
Oh, look at that.
It's all about perspective right there.
You can have chicks begging their boyfriends to get on
it. That's true.
I don't care about your small balls.
We're awful. How come we always end up talking about testicles on this show? I don't understand that.
It's really good. Yeah. we can be
I got nothing.
I have no answer.
Can't answer that one. Hot as balls, though. Hot as balls.
So speaking of Forrest Griffin, and as I segue smoothly once again, Stephan Bonnar has has kind of semi-retired. He said he would retire unless the UFC gave him a high-profile fight. And actually, his words are somebody with a lot of Twitter followers.
Yeah, that's a way to determine who you should fight.
So he says he's not looking to fight anybody who's I guess he wants like kind of iconic fights. I think
we have a lot of Twitter followers at this point, don't we? Maybe he can fight one of us.
Maybe he can fight one of us.
No, if he's going off that, he should fight Dr. Benjamin because he has a lot more Twitter followers than us.
I would actually kind of like to see him fight Dr. Benjamin.
Dr. Benjamin, fuck you, buddy.
Oh, Dr. Benjamin. He wouldn't come on our show.
I feel a little dirty actually putting doctor in front of his fucking name.
Yeah. Oh, and if you haven't heard the rant by Matthew Roth about Dr. Benjamin on the Untethered MMA podcast, you can check it out either on StitcherRadio.com or on YouTube.com/FightFans Radio.
Was there an Untethered yesterday?
Yes, there was. But it was on Blog Talk Radio, that crappy system, but because I was out of town, and it'll be up on YouTube tonight, probably right after the show. I just finished converting the files and stuff before we started the show, so I'll upload it to YouTube.
That was one thing that they got talking about was the Twitter follower thing. It was like, really, is that where our society is coming at? We're basing off like what's a good fight based on how many stupid Twitter followers they have.
Yes.
Is that what we've come to?
Yes, apparently it is. It totally is. That's where we are. And I've accepted it. It's okay.
The funny thing is, I was just saying, the funny thing is about this situation is that Forrest Griffin has come out and said he is, I don't mind, welcoming like the younger guys into the division. He was like, I don't want to be fighting guys like Alexander Gustafsson or any of the established guys where I'm just going to go out and look stupid. Because
Yeah.
I don't care. I don't mind if you have this new guy coming up, you want to test him against me, I'm more than happy to do that. Meanwhile, Bonnar's like, I don't want to fight any of these nobodies. I want to fight the big guys. I want to fight Forrest Griffin and like Rampage and somebody with a name. So there's like now a completely different like mindsets right now, which is I just think is hysterical.
Yeah. And good segue for Kohi. Rampage Jackson, and I think we might have mentioned this before, but Rampage Jackson is slated to face Glover Teixeira at UFC. I believe it's either 152 or 153.
Uh-oh.
We know Rampage talked a bunch of junk about the UFC and how he didn't want to fight for them anymore, and they don't pay him enough money, and blah, blah, blah.
You think he took this fight because he has no idea who he's fighting?
Yes, I do.
All right.
Absolutely do.
Everyone's avoiding him. And Rampage, if you remember from the time he was a coach on Ultimate Fighter, knows nothing about mixed martial arts. Or mixed martial artists themselves. He doesn't follow the sport. I really believe the guy has no idea what he's getting into here.
Well, the funny thing is that Dana was like, he asked for a striker, so we gave him a striker. And you're exactly right. Like Rampage literally has no idea what he's getting into. He's like, Glover Teixeira, yeah, whatever. Who did he beat? Or could you 2 years ago? Big deal. I was like, nah, he's going to come in and he's going to beat the shit out of you. Like,
Yeah.
it's going to be awesome. It's going to be awesome.
And of course that's that has to be exactly what Dana White had in mind when ponying up Glover Teixeira, who after his last performance is somebody that the UFC thinks is going to be a part of the future of the light heavyweight division. So and I still think Rampage will be a good test for Glover Teixeira. I like who did he fight? He fought
Kyle Kingsbury.
Yeah, Kyle Kingsbury. I do like Kyle Kingsbury. He's a big dude. He's not really great in any one area, but he's pretty okay in all areas, and he just ran through him like he was nothing. So I think Rampage is a good test for him. Facing somebody with that. If not for skill wise, because I don't think Rampage is quite there skill wise. Not because he's not physically able to, but because he just really does not care anymore. And I don't think he trains to really care about his performances in fights. But it'll be a very high profile fight for Glover Teixeira. And I think it'll be a good test for him to see how he handles that kind of that limelight. And
well, The only caveat to that is that if it's at 153, I heard some rumors. I saw some rumors on Twitter and that sort of thing that 153 is going to be headlined by BJ Penn versus Rosenthal. So I don't know how many people are actually going to see that fight then.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's I
guess if you put BJ and Rampage on a card, it'll do okay, but.
I still think BJ Penn can be quite a draw. I don't think the card will, break any records or anything like that. And I guess that's something we should also mention. UFC 148 numbers are slowly trickling in, and according to Dave Meltzer, at the minimum has broken 1 million pay-per-view buys. David, I know you follow Dave Meltzer really closely. Do you think that is like the final number, or do you think that we're still waiting to hear kind of a total tally, and that's just an estimate?
I think it's in the ballpark, but it could probably be anywhere from like 900,000 to 1,100,000. But these are early numbers. We should get better numbers in a week or so, more accurate numbers. And it might not change at all, but it could change. But it's clear the show did really well. And I think the really funny thing is that Dana White was apparently disappointed because his indicators were website traffic and other things which were like at UFC 100 levels. So he was expecting UFC 100 numbers on pay-per-view. And this is one reason he should have me on his payroll, because I could have disabused him of that notion very quickly before this ever happened. There was no way this was going to do him anywhere in the ballpark of UFC 100.
And I think so originally this was going to have the Anderson Silva versus Chael Sonnen headlining, and
the original card might have, but Dana White going into this Saturday show really when he was getting these numbers back, and when he spoke with Meltzer, he was disappointed with the million buys number. And I'm actually thinking, based on how few people probably saw that countdown show, 1 million buys is incredible in this climate. It's really, really good. You should be thrilled.
And we'll probably talk a little bit more about this whole about the fact that they put the wow, I am just really spacing out right now, and I apologize. That they put the countdown, the prime time on on Fuel. It did eventually replay on FX, but they debuted it on Fuel. They're really trying to pump up Fuel television, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I think we can at this point decide that Fuel television experiment is a failure of epic proportions for both Fox and the UFC.
For Fox? For UFC right now, especially for UFC fans. But for Fox, it might be viewed as something of a success with the numbers. It's doing better numbers than it's ever done.
Yes. No. And we talk about that a lot here too. That it's doing better than it ever has. But it's still not doing respectable numbers for a station. Just in general, the kind of numbers it's pulling in are still not great numbers. Just as a really poor metaphor for this whole thing. Let's say you start a Twitter account and you have 10 followers, and the next week you triple that to 30. You tripled your numbers. They're still not great numbers, though. Does that make sense? It's
that makes sense.
The way
I like that.
The way that they paint it, they like to use the percentages, and we're up 200% than we were last week. Well, that's great. So instead of 4 people watching it, it's 8 people. That's fantastic. That's that's great. But it's not really you're not really they're not making the dent that I thought that they were, that they think they probably were going to do with putting the UFC and putting the UFC's programming on there. Let's real quick. UFC on Fuel TV 4 was Wednesday afternoon.
Maybe because you were there.
Yeah.
Where it counts in the East Coast.
Yes. Well, I got to tell you, that place was empty. There was nobody there. At one point, I went out to watch the walk-ins. They play Teenage Wasteland. They have this like video montage that they play right before they go live, and it's pretty amazing. And so me and another guy went out to watch it, and we kind of saw what the arena looked like, and it was like an amateur show. There were just huge swaths of empty seats in the arena, and the HP Pavilion is a huge arena. It was just way too big for a fuel card. With the fights that they had on there, and for it to be on a Wednesday and on the West Coast, which means it started at like 2:45 or some crap like that. I mean, it's just poor planning by the UFC and Fox, just from beginning to end. They managed to actually garner some decent numbers, and again, all relative to like we were just saying, all relative to what they've done before. I think this is the second most watched UFC event on Fuel TV at 221,000 as the average viewers, and that's poor. I mean, that's really piss poor. There are probably public access shows with more watchers than that. Okay, maybe not. But
well, I mean, what is really crazy about it is just, again, we've talked about the promotion. There was zero promotion for this card. I had a lot of friends, who follow me on Twitter to be like, holy shit, there's a UFC card tonight?
Yeah.
Because traditionally, the day after the MLB All-Star Game is the worst, there's the worst day for sports possible. NBA season's done, NHL season's done. MLB just had the All-Star break, so they're quiet for now. Football is, a few months down the road. So it is well known to be probably the worst sports day of the entire year. And they decided to have a card on that day. That just blows my mind how ridiculously stupid that is.
Yeah. Just bad timing. I don't understand. There was a point where it felt like the UFC was getting the hang of things. Like they were starting to understand their audience. They were starting to understand their fans. They were starting to understand trends. And then this Fox deal came along, and we thought this was the absolute, best thing that could happen to the UFC. Finally, a network television show we've been waiting forever. It's on Fox, really well known. I wouldn't say well respected, but well known network. Lots of eyeballs on there, especially for football. And it feels like they're completely botching this. And I've seen a lot of people talk about how they're using Fuel and how they're using these shows. And there have been suggestions that perhaps they should do something more like the Strikeforce Challengers on Fuel TV, where we've seen thus far 2 performances, in my opinion, and I'm hoping you guys share this opinion, 2 performances wasted on Fuel Television, and that would be the Korean Zombie from Fuel 3 and Chris Weidman from Fuel 4. I mean,
for sure, Weidman should have been on the Anderson Silva show.
Yeah.
I think every headliner they've used on Fuel thus far has pretty much been a waste.
Yeah.
I mean, because Ellenberger Campman and then Ellenberger Sanchez as well. I mean, those were fights where you're looking to set up a contender, and if no one sees the fight, then who gives a shit? That's my main reason why I think everyone was, as soon as the fight happened, everyone was clamoring. It's like, holy shit, Weidman's awesome. Maybe he is the next fight for Anderson Silva. It's like, well, maybe he's there skill wise, but as far as popularity and people knowing him, no, he's nowhere near that, because he just had his breakthrough performance on the show that was watched by 200,000 people. But you can't turn around and be like, oh, he just did really great on this Fuel card. Let's put him in the headlining spot of this huge pay-per-view. No, you can't do that. You got to give the guy a chance to get some fans, to get some notoriety.
I don't know. I think you could, because I don't think you're necessarily sacrificing that big a show with Anderson against whoever he's going to fight anyway.
There is an argument to be made, especially Anderson's last few fights. They've been really exciting. The Chael fight, the first Chael fight. He comes back from a huge deficit to win a stunning, quote unquote, victory over Chael Sonnen. He beats the piss out of Was Okami after that? Okami was after that. I gotta look this up because
Okami, and I think that's the last one.
No, it was Belfort after
Belfort,
that.
then Okami.
So know he has that spectacular front kick to Belfort, knocks him out. First time we'd seen that in the UFC, and then Okami, he just completely schools him in Rio. So there is an argument to be made that Anderson Silva might be getting to the point now where he's even though I think Anderson Silva is pound for pound the best fighter in the world, and I mean that across all combat sports, hands down best fighter in the world. George St. Pierre, I think, has proven to be the more popular of the two of them. And I think he's starting to get into that territory with GSP, where people will watch a GSP fight no matter who he's fighting. He could be fighting, the midget from Game of Thrones, and people will watch it.
That Okami fight didn't do that great.
Well, I think that's an exception, considering that it was an overseas card, and overseas cards don't generally do very well.
And that was the same night that hurricane was rolling up the East Coast.
Yeah.
And a lot of bars were shut down. Like, I know most of Hoboken, New Jersey was shut down. All the bars in D.C. were shut down. People lost electricity. So I think that was just a rough night for East Coast buyers.
And if I remember correctly, it did a little bit better than I think, at least in my estimation, that I thought it was going to do. I think it did like 300,000. So considering all of the things that were working against it, that wasn't bad for, an overseas show against a guy that I don't think anybody really thought who had a chance against Anderson Silva. But, the numbers got better with Vitor Belfort. The numbers, of course, through the roof for this second matchup with Chael Sonnen. The way he ended the fight, with as many people that saw it, the way he ended the fight, I think he might be getting into that territory of GSP where people may just want to watch the card just for Anderson Silva. You would think people were already at that point, considering how amazing he's been in the past, but that was not true for a very long time. And now I think he's starting to get into that. I mean, do you guys agree that he's perhaps kind of sneaky? I don't think he's quite up there with GSP, but he's getting there, where people are like, hey, this guy really puts on exciting fights, unlike somebody else I know.
I'd want to see him do big numbers with someone that you wouldn't expect it from, like a GSP could do with, a Jake Shields or anybody he's in there with. It still seems to me that Anderson needs the right opponent in the right situation, or has until now. You would have thought that he could have broken through with that Forrest fight, the way he finished Forrest, but it still didn't really click, and sometimes Anderson's performances turn people off.
Yes.
I would agree that this should, but you would think it should have happened by now anyway. So I'd want to see him do some big numbers with a Weidman, or whoever he fights next, with a Lombard, if Lombard is next, or even with Bisping. But Bisping could do some decent numbers just because Bisping could talk a lot of trash.
Yeah, I like the idea of the Bisping fight a lot, because I think Anderson really thrives in situation where he's not the villain, where someone else, like Chael Sonnen or Michael Bisping, would come across as the villain, and Anderson Silva has to go there with something to prove. I think if it's a different kind of motivation, like in the Damian Maia fights and the Taos ladies and the Patrick Cote fights, where, people were, turned Anderson into the villain because, or weren't really interested in the fights anyway, because it's like, this is supposed to be the best fighter in the world, and he's acting like this, he's a douche. Like, who wants to watch this? But I think if you put him in a situation where he's got to overcome and face this guy that, people have a strong dislike for, or at least have a strong reaction to, I think that's when people want to see Anderson Silva. I'm with you, Dave. I'm not entirely... the times that we've seen Anderson Silva do really well is when he's had a strong supporting cast, like DJ Penn, Forrest Griffin, Chuck Liddell, that sort of thing. And then in this card, I still give a lot of the credit to Chael Sonnen. But yeah, I need to see him sell well against someone who isn't Chael Sonnen, who isn't Michael Bisping, to really kind of lump him in that same category as GSP.
And again, I'm not saying he is. I'm saying he's getting there.
I definitely agree. I think he's getting to the point, because I think what really kind of surprised a lot of people is just how relatively unknown he was in Brazil for the longest time. And then that he had, despite the fact that maybe only, there were 350,000 buys for the fight against Okami, it was still an performance in front of his home country, and I think that garnered him a lot of extra fans and a lot of sponsorship deals in Brazil, commercials and whatnot. So yeah, I think that was the big turning point right there, and then of course the Chael Sonnen stuff definitely helped as well.
I feel like and we'll close up right after this. We'll have just last statements about this, but I really think that something that kind of supports that he's getting in that direction is the Silva Belfort fight. Vitor Belfort is big with hardcore fans, but casual fans had no idea who he was when he came back into the UFC. And his performance against Rich Franklin, it wasn't a great card. It was kind of a weird win for him. It was really quick. I don't know if anybody really bought that Vitor Belfort was going to be able to beat him, but that got 725,000 pay-per-view buys, and that was really good for Silva facing somebody who I believe that most casual fans had no idea who he was.
Well, and my counter to that is that Forrest Griffin versus Rich Franklin was on that card, and so was John Jones versus Ryan Bader. So I think
I don't think those fights sold that
and
show.
Okay, Forrest Griffin and Rich Franklin.
Yeah, Forrest by that point, Forrest is not a big draw. You can look back at Forrest's last fights before that, and he wasn't. Those numbers were Vitor against Anderson. I would attribute most big time.
Yeah, I mean, using that kind of formula, I mean, we could make that argument for probably most pay-per-view cards. They have at least.
Well, sometimes it's valid, and sometimes I don't really think Forrest sold too many buys there, and John Jones wasn't selling any buys at that point either, really. Negligible, I would think. Like even if they did, the 700,000 largely came from that top fight.
So I heard a rumor, speaking of pay-per-view buys, and I have no idea if this is even remotely legitimate.
147?
147? I heard
100 to 150,000 is what I was, or 150 to 200? One of those.
Yeah, 150 to 200 pay-per-view buys, which is
that's as low as it can go.
That is as low as it can go. It's like a limbo.
That's your basis right there.
It can't get any lower than that show.
I'm looking at like past.
Those are people paying for UFC.
Past pay-per-view numbers, and not taking into account some of the early day stuff because it's not fair to really put that up against.
It's probably the lowest in the Zuffa era.
Franklin versus Okami was 200,000 pay-per-view buys. I don't even remember that fight. I must have mentally blocked it out.
Like UFC 70-something?
72, yeah. I mean,
Franklin's only memorable when he's getting his ass kicked by Anderson.
Let me see, that's 200,000. I'm trying to see. I could have sworn I saw 215 for Hughes versus Alves at UFC 85.
Maynard versus Edgar 3, I think, did pretty low numbers as well.
Yeah, it did 225.
Yeah, that despite the fact that, I don't know, I hate MMA fans for not buying that pay-per-view. But
Aldo versus Mendez at 235. So, I mean, like, wowza, people. Wowza. Not surprised. I mean, nobody knew who was on the card, and it was they did this weird thing where they integrated it with the finale for the Ultimate Fighter and for Ultimate Fighter Brazil, and just it was
more people saw this week's Fuel card than they saw that pay-per-view.
Yeah, but having said that, supposedly 20 million Brazilians saw it. So. If the
They're
UFC,
crazy there. They're just fucking crazy.
If the UFC's, and if you watched some of the Dana White's vlogs and you watched the one from that card, the line to get in to see the fight was literally down the street. I mean, there were just hundreds of people lined up for this fight card. So, I'm wondering how much they really get financially from holding these cards. They're not getting the pay-per-view numbers for it, but they're definitely getting the support of people in these countries. So, I think that's interesting. I think this Macau card coming up in Macau in November will be really interesting to see how that does. And I will not say anything racist, and I will move on. Let's talk real quick the Fantasy Fight League standings. We are partnered with Finish Show's Fantasy Fight League, and you can go to their website, which is fantasyMMAworld.com, and you can follow them on Twitter at FFFightLeague. And they have a for cash or for prizes Fantasy MMA League. The grand prize, of course, which we've been talking about on here, is you get 2 tickets to a future UFC event, and that includes airfare and hotel. I think that's pretty badass. I don't know any other places that are offering those kinds of prizes for fantasy MMA standings. And Justin Cohey has been good enough to be our guinea pig for this, and he has entered into their season 3. So tell us a little bit about your experience so far with it, Justin, and tell us about your standings right now. I'm laughing a little bit.
I don't want to talk about my standings, but no, it's a cool site. It's really easy interface to use. Log in. They already have the card up of what you're going to be going through, and they organize it real nicely of what fights are on the card. You pick what you would see a lot of places do is probably just the main card, but these guys go one step further and put even the prelims on there, which is, I think, is really cool because the way the UFC prelims are working now, it's specifically on Wednesday's card. So a lot of guys that we're really unfamiliar with. So it just adds another degree of difficulty, which some people may not like, but I really appreciate as a hardcore fan.
Yeah.
Because it really makes you think, and guys who do the research and check records and figure out who these guys are. You have to work for it, and I think that's a really cool thing. Real simple. All you got to do is pick a winner, how you think they're going to win, what round you think they're going to win in, and you go from there. After UFC 148, I was actually number 10. But unfortunately, there were, on Wednesday's card, there were 3 fights in a row that I just got completely wrong. So I actually dropped down to 33 at this point, but I'm hoping with the next card I can hopefully crack back up into the top 20 or something. But don't count me out just yet.
And nobody's going to count you out, Cohey. I know that you do. Most of the time, you do fairly well with your predictions. You're not like me. You don't pick with your heart. You pick with your head. And just we'd like to congratulate the top 3 in their standings for Finishers Fantasy Fight League, and that would be Andy Grady, Jay Willia, and Planting a Fan. I love these names. And they respectively come in at 87, 86, and 85 points. But this is only 2 events into Season 3. That's UFC 148 and UFC on Fuel TV 4. And the next event will be blah, 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 blah. UFC 149, I believe. Am I correct? 149. Yeah. And that is the 21st. I believe it's July 21st. And that's
going to be another tough card because it's been wrought with injuries so much that we've got a lot of new faces and a lot of guys that we're unfamiliar with. Guys that might be on the preliminary card are now on the main card. So
yeah, absolutely.
It's going to be just another interesting week once we get start seeing those picks.
But let's actually talk about Wednesday's card. And I just want to. David only saw the main event, and so we're going to just kind of, I think, gloss over the. I'm actually looking up the card now. Even though I was there live, I don't remember nothing. I don't remember.
Yeah, I've got the fights in front of me as well as some matchmaking ideas if you're interested.
Oh, absolutely. So. Let's talk about the first card or the first fight on the live card, which was T.J. Dillashaw versus Vaughn Lee. I thought it was an interesting matchup to have. Vaughn Lee had a really impressive performance against, I believe it was Kid Yamamoto, right, that he fought, and
correct,
and submitted. He's a really fast-paced fighter. I thought it was a good test for T.J. Dillashaw, at least on paper. The reality was it was not a test at all. I think Dillashaw definitely was getting peppered pretty good on the feet by Vaughn Lee. I mean, Vaughn Lee's stand-up is definitely much more diverse than TJ's. TJ saw that. He was getting blasted a little bit on the feet there. especially the first minute of the fight. Von Lee came in with some really great combos and landed most of those shots fairly cleanly. I remember it being a pain in the ass to keep up with. Dillashaw made the adjustment. He used his strong wrestling base, took him down, got his back, and worked the rear naked choke, and apparently has been working on it and finally actually got it. If you remember his last fight, he tried the rear naked choke. It had to be a record number of times that he tried a rear naked choke and was not able to get it. But he actually was able to get it this time, and he got the tap and the win. So, Justin, what's next for TJ, according to Justin?
And the life according to Justin, I think Bruce Leroy is actually a pretty decent fight for TJ. I don't know what it is about him. I guess maybe it was his fight on the Ultimate Fighter finale where he just got absolutely decimated by John Dodson. Mm-hmm. So I'm still a little wary about him. I saw some people suggesting that he should be fighting like maybe Rafael on that next, but I think his seat style is probably a little too more well-rounded and a little more experienced than TJ at this point. So I think Bruce Leroy, otherwise known as Alex Caceres, is a good fight for TJ. You got a guy who is popular amongst fans, who, despite having a slow start in the UFC, is actually shown some decent skill. Won on the card with a nice triangle choke over Demacia Page. Has looked good as of late, so I think that's a smart matchup to make.
Let me ask you a quick question. Did you watch the preliminary card on Facebook?
Unfortunately, I did not see any of the prelims because I was at work and then I had dinner with a friend. So I got back right as the Dos Anjos and Njokuani fight was ending.
Okay.
And then it's all Dillashaw versus Lee.
So David, I don't suppose you saw the Facebook fights, did you?
I only saw the main event.
So there was a fight. Just real quick. Marcelo Guimarães and Dan Stigen. I don't know if either one of you heard about that fight. Did either one of you hear the crap that went on during that fight?
I heard it was just not a very good fight.
Oh, it was not a good fight, but it was bizarre. It was probably one of the more bizarre fights I've ever seen. And not necessarily because of the techniques they were using, but at some point, Marcelo was using, he was really clinching Dan against the fence. He wasn't doing anything at all. And that's controlling, that's octagon control right there. And he won the fight based on that only, if you ask me. I mean, Dan was whenever Dan was able to get away, he was able to completely outland Marcelo. But most of the time, it was up against the fence. And at one point, I believe it was the second round, Dan gets frustrated and he grunts really loudly, like a trying to psych himself up kind of grunt. And then the last minute of the fight, Marcelo is making the weirdest grunting noises. I mean, just it made me...
Go ahead and do it.
No, I'm not going to do it because it made me uncomfortable. It made me seriously uncomfortable. And I was like, this is not necessary at all. And I felt bad for Dan. Dan is obviously not UFC material. And it may not even be that he's not there yet. He just may not be UFC material, period. It would serve the UFC well, I think, if they, depending on if they're planning on what they're going to do with Strikeforce, to just send him down to Strikeforce. But it was just a really bizarre fight. Andrew Craig against Rafael Natal was a great fight because in that first round, Natal was definitely winning. I mean, he was winning by far. And even if you hadn't seen any of the punches landed, it was obvious by Natal's posture and behavior, and he was egging him on. He was laughing and putting his hands down. And then at round two, Andrew Craig came out and head kicked him to hell and won the fight via KO. That was really nice. Chris Carriaso, is that how you say his name? Carriaso?
Yeah, Carriaso.
Yeah, he fought Josh Ferguson. And I really like Josh Ferguson, and he looked good at flyweight. He looked really good at 125. Chris Carriaso, though, is on a totally different level than Ferguson. And I think based on his performance against Josh Ferguson, I expect to see Carrioso featured more against. They're really going to start utilizing him in the flyweight division. I think he was just that impressive to me in his fight against Ferguson. Alex Caceres, I thought he looked really, really good in his fight. I mean, he was getting taken down by Demasio Page, which is normally what you would do with Alex Caceres. You're going to take him down, and you're going to kind of either try and ground and pound him out, which we really haven't seen too often, or just kind of decision him, which is really what you would think you would do. And Alex has definitely been working on his jiu-jitsu. His triangle, which has always been his go-to move, is a lot stronger. He was Page was making some mistakes there on the ground, and Caceres recognized them and was able to capitalize on them. So I agree with your matchup, TJ Dillashaw against Caceres. I think that would be interesting because Dillashaw is going to want to take Caceres down. I think Caceres is going to be too much for him on the feet, and even though I think Dillashaw hits harder, I think Caceres is going to have a much more diverse stand-up game. It's going to frustrate Dillashaw. He's going to take him down. Is Caceres going to be able to use that? He's really good off his back. He's going to be able to use that against TJ Dillashaw. So I like that matchup. The next fight on the card was the French Cookie Monster, Francis Carmon, and he defeated Carlos Vamola, who was making his debut at 185. This was his debut at 185, right?
I believe so.
No.
He fought Mike. He submitted Mike Macenzio.
Yeah, you're right. Vamola kind of creeps me out with that crazy eye thing he's got going on. He hasn't been impressive in really anything. I mean, he's won fights, but he's just not a very good fighter, in my opinion. But Francis Carmon, despite making some really lame mistakes, like that takedown that he did from way on the outside against Vamola, and almost ended up in a guillotine choke. He was able to get out of that. I think he's a fairly impressive guy. I really like the way he ended the fight. It was he had the crucifix from the back, transitioned to a rear naked choke from there, and that was really just gorgeous stuff from him. He scares me when he talks because he does sound like Cookie Monster, but the French Cookie Monster. The French Cookie Monster. And I will also not do that impression either, but it's very scary. It's very, very scary. But where would you like to see Francis Carmon go from here? He's still showing some signs of being green with some of the mistakes that he's made. Specifically mentioning that the guillotine he pretty much gave Carlos Vamola. Where would you like to see him go next at 185?
Well, what I'm seeing a lot of people suggest is Costas Philippou, which I think is actually a pretty interesting fight for him, given Philippou's tendencies to keep things standing and how good his boxing is. But I'm leaning more towards a fight with maybe CB Dalloway, just because, like you said, I think Francis Carmon showed some glaring weaknesses in his submission. Well, he showed some good submission defense, but it was because he put himself in some positions that he should not have been in. And had it been anybody else, Carmon easily could have been submitted. So I think CB Dalloway, just because he's a guy who is not great on the feet, but has showed some great tenacity in his submission game. I think that would make for a good measuring stick for Carmon to see if he's actually someone who learns from his mistakes.
Yeah, and something that CB Dalloway would bring to the table that I think would be really interesting. He does have a really good grasp on submissions. I mean, if you remember, he pulled a Peruvian necktie on Jesse Taylor, and let's be honest, as much as I love that move, and I do, it's one of my favorite submissions. It is kind of a move that you kind of have to stumble into like an idiot, because it takes so long to kind of set up. It's not something that you can really kind of snatch on people. It takes a little bit to set it up, and I think CB has some good submissions, and I think he'll be a good challenge for French Cookie Monster. So I like that matchup a lot. I really do. Next on the card we had, hold on a second, how did I just lose my place like that? I'm just all crazy. Aaron Simpson beat Kenny Robertson in the Aaron Simpson way, which is dry hump like you would not believe. Despite him claiming that the drop in weight from 185 to 170, this was his debut at 170, that he was going to be able to, finish more fights, that he was going to really look to be finishing fights. He did not. I think at some point he did try one submission. Maybe he may have tried two. I don't really remember, but it was just not a good fight at all. And at the point where John Fitch had to drop out of this fight, it was originally John Fitch was supposed to fight him. At the point where John Fitch had to drop out of the fight should have been moved to the preliminary card, if you ask me. It just was not worthy to be, third from the top. Despite this being a Fuel TV card, I still think, taking that into consideration, it wasn't worth third from the top. But give me your thoughts on where you think Aaron Simpson should go next.
Yeah, this was kind of a strange fight because a lot of people were expecting, because Kenny Robinson's the guy who fought in the UFC once before against Mike Pearson and just got absolutely smashed. And I think people were expecting Aaron Simpson to kind of do the same thing because we've seen Aaron Simpson come out with some strong striking and just knock people silly, but we've also seen him just kind of grind things out. I don't know if this was a case of the him not handling the first weight cut well, because if you read MMA Junkie, he was saying this cut to 170 was easier than any cut he did to 185 thanks to a change from a vegetarian diet to completely vegan diet. So he said he didn't really have to, that he really didn't have to.
Judging him.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, how you don't eat cheese and meat, you can go screw yourself.
I'm sure you can lose all sorts of weight doing that, though.
I'm sure you can. You know why? Because the only thing that's left is air and dust. But go ahead.
But some people were saying that it was like, but then he was, at the end of the fight, he was like, I guess I didn't handle the weight cut too well, blah blah blah. I guess it was tough, but prior to a fight, you don't want to let a guy know that your weight cut's not going well or that it's tougher than you expected. But anyway, a lot of people were saying, go ahead and set up the Aaron Simpson John Fitch fight, and I think that is one of the dumbest mistakes you could ever make.
You really think so? I mean, other than it'll be probably the cure for insomnia for a lot of people, but
well, John Fitch, despite the fact that he just lost to Johnny Hendricks, his only other loss in the UFC is to George St. Pierre. Mm-hmm. Just because he loses to two top contenders doesn't mean he needs to be fighting middle of the road guys. Okay. John Fitch should be a solid gatekeeper. He should still be fighting upper level guys. Aaron Simpson wasn't an upper level guy at 185, and he's not going to be an upper level guy at 170. I think Simpson could be a gatekeeper as well, but he needs to be a gatekeeper like 2 steps down from where John Fitch is.
Right.
I think guys like Seth Baczynski, Sean Pearson, John Hathaway, I think those are the kind of fights you put Aaron Simpson in.
Okay. All right. I like that. You really do think these things through. I got to find that magical notebook that I know that you keep, where you keep all of these things in.
It's literally just ripping like half pages off with a yellow legal pad.
and it's the same thing where like late at night while you're asleep, your window slowly opens up and Joe Silva climbs through with a flashlight. He reads it, puts it back exactly where he found it, and then climbs right back out. I know he does.
I live on the first floor, so it's not like he has to climb up anything.
Well, he's a small man, so there really isn't a whole lot that he could have done. So he's a tiny dude, really tiny. All right, so the co-main event, if you want to call it that, James Teixeira fought a new and quote-unquote improved Joey Beltran at 205. Joey Beltran has, at least from what I can tell, he has left Lloyd Irvin and an alliance. Am I correct in that, David?
I'm not sure.
Because he definitely did not come with the camp that he came with was neither one of them. That
might be a good assumption. I'm not sure. I haven't heard anything.
It was I thought it was a good fight for James Teixeira. His boxing looked good. And despite getting in trouble a few times with Joey Beltran, and I think that's kind of expected, Joey Beltran does hit hard, and he's a hard guy to finish. And those are two combinations, guys, that nobody really likes. If you're facing an opponent who's hard to finish and who hits really hard. It's not that Joey Beltran has really great skills in any area. He really doesn't. I wouldn't even say he's a well-rounded mixed martial artist. He's a more of a brawler than anything else. He didn't look really that great in the fight. He still looked fat in the fight, to be honest with you. He looked like he could probably make 185, to be honest with you, or he needs to start lifting more weights or do more sit-ups or something. I don't know what's going on, but he still looked awfully flabby around that midsection, and he had bitch tits, and it was just really kind of unpleasant to look at. But anyway, I thought Teixeira looked really good in there. Beltran, I thought, was a good matchup because when he was able to land a few things on Teixeira at the end of the first round, James Teixeira was kind of swarming Joey Beltran. Joey Beltran managed to land a clean one on Teixeira's chin. It kind of dazed him a little bit, and to see Teixeira be able to kind of recover from that, and he instantly went to grappling. He went for a double leg. And that shows that he's at least aware of what he should be doing when he's in trouble, and that's the kind of thing you want to see in a guy like this who is kind of slowly making his way up the ladder. Where would you like to see James Teixeira go next with this victory?
Well, for one thing, kudos to him. I read a little earlier today that he actually had a broken hand and a hairline fracture in his foot during the fight, and continued to put on the performance that he did. I think that was really, really impressive. There are kind of two ways you could treat Teixeira. You could either kind of keep him on the similar path that he's on, or you could go ahead and give him a decent jump. If you keep him on the same path that he's on, I think a fight with Cyril Diabate would be a fun fight.
I like that, yeah.
They're both good strikers. I think that'd be a pretty fun brawl to watch. If you want to give him a little jumping competition, then I say go ahead and give him Rogerio Nogueira. Nogueira hasn't fought in a while. He's going to be coming in with some ring rust, dealing with some injuries as well. We've seen in his fights in the UFC that he doesn't do well against wrestlers, so it'd be nice to put Rogerio back in a fight where the guy's pretty much going to stand with him. So yeah. I think that'd be a fun fight too.
Okay, I like that. I like that you're giving us kind of options there, whether we want to keep him on a slow path or give him a step up in competition. I really thought his boxing looked really good, looked really strong. The fact that Joey Beltran is so hard to knock out was kind of deceiving in the fight, because Teixeira was landing some really great hard combinations, really clean, crisp combinations on Beltran. So, and just real quick, I know we haven't talked about the losers, but Joey Beltran, do you think that this is it for him for the UFC yet again, or do you think the UFC is going to give him another shot? Did I lose you there? Did I lose Kohi?
Sorry, I'm sorry. I accidentally hit mute. No, I think they'll probably keep him around for at least one more fight. Number one, because he's in a new weight class, and number two, because he stepped into this fight late kind of last minute notice.
Yeah.
But they tend to treat guys well. Krzysztof Sierczynski, we're not sure if he's going to be fighting again, but if he is, he's coming off a loss as well. Kyle Kingsbury is just coming off a loss. The one fight that I really would like to see, but unfortunately he's tied up right now, is Fabio Maldonado. He's actually got a fight coming up, but I thought that would have been a really fun fight for Beltran.
Oh, wow. You were really just trying to kill Beltran, and I like it. I really do. All right, so we've all seen the main event, the result, of course, was an absolute trouncing of Mark Munoz, and a second-round stoppage via elbow and punches. But let me ask you guys this first before we really get into details about the fight. There's a lot of correlation being drawn between Chris Weidman's rise and Jon Jones' rise. Do you think that is a fair comparison to make? And do you think that any of it kind of holds any water? David, give me your thoughts, since mostly me and Justin have been talking lately.
I don't think it's a fair comparison. I think it puts too much on Chris Weidman's shoulders at this point in time. I think Weidman matches up extremely well with Anderson Silva, and I'd actually pick him to win that fight if and when it's made. I think he's going to be the next middleweight champion. Not necessarily that he's going to get the next shot, but I think he is the next middleweight champion, and I think he represents a threat to anyone he fights, because he's really a well-rounded guy. He's got good stand-up, probably not fantastic, but good stand-up. He has elite-level wrestling, levels above Chael Sonnen, and his submissions are also probably elite level. And granted, Mark Munoz, I think, Erica, you're right that he was overrated going into this fight, but the domination that Weidman showed, that was no accident. I mean, it was from the first opening seconds of the fight, and it wasn't just a matter of wrestle-fucking someone. He took him down, put him in bad positions, was going for chokes. Really, I've been impressed. I think I've talked up Weidman in the past on the show itself, but this was really, I mean, I think the Damian Maia fight was an aberration. He lost 30 pounds in a week and a half.
Yeah, and it was 3 weeks' notice.
And still won the fight.
Yeah, and still won the fight.
Still beat Damian Maia, who might be overrated himself. But I am so impressed with Chris Weidman. I wouldn't call him another John Jones. I think John Jones is unique. Could go down as the best fighter ever when all is said and done. And I'm not sure I'd say the same about Weidman, but he's so impressive.
What about you, Justin? You know, they really have been talking a lot about Weidman's kind of dominance. You know, of course, the Damian Maia fight being the one exception, but and he said it after the fight: if I get a full fight camp, I finish guys. And not to sound like Kenny Florian, who, by the way, recognized me, which I was very happy with. Look at me schmoozing with the best of them.
That's awesome. He recognized you.
Yeah, I saw him backstage, and he was like, "Hey, what's going on?" I was like, "Oh." You
met him previously?
I met him on my way back from Vegas. He was in the airport with me. Well, I've met him a couple of times behind stage. Especially the fuel carts, and Tim and John Anik do the the commentating. I run into them a lot behind stage. After all the shows, the UFC buys all of the production crew food to eat. They give you food to eat when you first get there, and then they give you food to eat after the show, which is, I think they treat that's really nice. They don't have to do that, and the fact that they do, I think, speaks volumes for the kind of employer they are. But everybody comes out to eat, and including those guys. The fighters, I think, eat someplace else, but if they do eat, if they're not at the hospital. I ran into him, and I've talked to him before, and he told me that he moved to California because of doing the UFC Tonight show, and it was just too difficult to fly from Boston to California as much as he was, and blah 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 blah. So then I ran into him at the airport, and we talked for a good 15-20 minutes, just kind of bullshitting and talking about his retirement. That was right after he announced his retirement, and we talked about that. And then I ran into him backstage, and it was like old friends. And I was like, "Oh, Kenny, you don't know what kind of trouble you're starting right now." Because next thing's going to be, "Hey, Kenny, how about you come on our show and just kind of bullshit with us for a little while?" So that's my next step, guys. It's going to happen. And he will be by far, I think, the biggest person we've had on the show, other than Ronda Rousey, with her crazy ass. We will definitely talk about Ronda Rousey's crazy ass in a second.
Thank God.
She is. She's absolutely crazy. But Justin, all that to say, what are your thoughts on those kinds of comparisons?
I think they're a little early. I think specifically now that we've seen John Jones when he ran through guys like Brandon Vera and Matt Yushchenko initially, and then he went on that run where he beat Bader, Shogun Rua, Rampage, Machida, and now Rashad Evans. Like, we haven't seen a guy run through that level of competition in this short amount of time, and probably in UFC history.
Yeah, that's true.
That run he went on and is still on, it's just absolutely unbelievable. I do think Weidman is extremely talented. I'm pissed at myself that I talked myself out of picking him. And I think that was one of those things that I just kind of failed to consider, that, this is one of those times where Chris Weidman's getting a full camp in, and he's going to have the weight cut figured out, or he's going to at least have it worked out over a longer period of time versus, a couple of weeks, because I didn't realize just how big Chris Weidman is until he was standing up next to him.
Yeah, he's a huge
towering over him.
Huge weight.
And for him to, I think it's easy for a lot of fighters to say that John Jones is the blueprint that they want to follow. You hear guys be like, like Matt Mitrione says, he was like, I want to be the Dominic Cruz of heavyweight division. I don't know if that's necessarily something that he's going to be able to emulate.
Yeah.
But when Chris Weidman says that John Jones is the kind of guy that I want to emulate, that's the blueprint for me, and then comes out there and throws an elbow like John Jones would, and has the timing down, and just everything about it was perfect.
Yeah.
That makes for a really, really scary fighter.
Yes. And that's something that that I would like to emphasize is when you watch that fight, that elbow was not like some sort of weird last-ditch effort by Chris Weidman. That was perfectly timed. He timed that. He did some. He threw. I think he threw a couple of punches standing up. And Mark Munoz came in, tried to throw that really hard overhand right, probably out of desperation because he didn't want to get taken down again. And the timing by Chris Weidman is just amazing. The way he turns a missed punch into an elbow, and I think he missed the punch on purpose just to set up that elbow. And the way he hit it cleanly on Mark Munoz's head is just it really is. And that's why people keep drawing these kind of comparisons between him and John Jones is this kind of discipline. So do you expect him to continue on this kind of John Jones-esque rise? I tend to again agree with David. John Jones is just a really kind of special phenomenon that we're getting to see kind of unfold in front of our eyes right now. So it's kind of hard to believe that we get to see lightning essentially strike twice so close to each other. So, is he going to be as good as John Jones? Maybe not. Probably not. But is he going to be one of the top guys for 185? Absolutely. Right.
I don't know, and I'm sure this is something we're going to talk about right now, is I don't know if putting him in a title shot with Anderson Silva is the best move to do right now. But, it's always a possibility, and I think Weidman stands an excellent chance of winning that fight.
There were several things that were being discussed in terms of, who Weidman should face next. And we discussed it, of course, as well backstage, and I really, there were a lot of interesting ones, and I think, and this is never really a great way to match fights up, but I feel really bad for Michael Bisping. He has really been trying to get that title shot. I think putting Michael Bisping up against either Brian Stann or Alan Belcher, and if he wins that fight, giving him the title shot is the right thing to do. I'm not a huge Michael Bisping fan, if at all, but I think the kid has done a lot at 185. Maybe his competition has been the best, but that's not really his fault. He fights who the UFC puts in front of him, and he's done fairly well for the most part. He's only got 2 losses at 185, one against Anderson Silva, who just managed to really kind of end a couple of rounds with some really strong almost finishes. And then, of course, the knockout heard around the world against Dan Henderson at UFC 100.
He lost to Chael Sonnen, too.
Oh, I forgot about that. And he lost to Chael Sonnen, but a competitive fight to Chael Sonnen. That's still
a fight that no one expected him to be competitive.
No, and there are still some people who think that Michael Bisping won that fight. So, it's I think he's made a case for himself, considering how shallow the 185-pound division is. I think just based off of that, he's made a strong enough case if he should win his next fight against either one of those guys. And again, that would be Alan Belcher or Brian Stann. I think both really good fights for him, good matchups for him. In terms of the fights themselves, I'd expect the fights themselves to be pretty exciting. Both of them would probably want to stand with him. Michael Bisping brings something to the table. They bring something to the table. So I'd like to see that. Whoever he doesn't fight out of those two, I think should be Chris Weidman's next opponent. And that will allow time to kind of pass for Bisping to have this fight, for Chris Weidman to have the fight, for Bisping to get the title shot should he win, and then go on and have Chris Weidman get the next shot against Anderson Silva, because I don't have Michael Bisping winning that fight against Anderson Silva. But you never know what will happen. I hear a lot of people saying, though, they would like Chris Weidman to face Chael Sonnen, who really is the barometer for the 185-pound division, but unfortunately he just lost a title shot. What are your thoughts on that, Justin?
Not crazy about the idea. I think the guys on Untethered really kind of nailed it. I think it was Derek who said this yesterday, that he'd be okay with the idea of Weidman fighting Anderson Silva or maybe Chael Sonnen next, but he thinks it would probably be, maybe more beneficial to go ahead and give him, maybe almost a slight step up or almost a lateral move, just to give him more cage experience. Because the guy's fought like 8 or 9 times. So that's why I've been tweeting a lot about this, and why my pick for his next fight would be the winner of Jake Shields versus Ed Herman. Number one, because I tend to think that Jake Shields wins that fight, and because I think it represents someone who has been, who is far more experienced than him, but doesn't represent such a huge step up to the point where it would be overwhelming.
Right.
So I tend to think either one of those guys represents a good kind of name for him to fight. And then if he passes that test, then go ahead and put him in with Silva, or go ahead and put him in with Sonnen, and really give him that full force push.
Okay.
This is just, I'm sure people disagree with me on this, because I'm just the kind of guy to take the slow road with most guys, because I like to see prospects, get built up rather than thrown to the wolves immediately and then just get thrashed.
Right. And I remember when John Jones got the title shot against Shogun, there was a lot of clamor. And again, John Jones is the exception to most every rule that we know right now in MMA. But John Jones was thrown in with Shogun, and he just dominated, despite being thrown in with quote unquote the Wolves. So, I think a lot of people are expecting that from Chris Weidman. But let me ask you guys this real quick, and David, I'm going to shoot this over to you. Some of the things that we can draw, conclusions we can draw between Chris Weidman and John Jones is, Weidman is a lot older than I thought he was, but he's still a relatively young guy. He's only 28. He's got a strong wrestling background, but being young and having that strong wrestling base, it seems like we're seeing a lot more guys coming out that are a little bit more dynamic, mixing things up a little bit more. Is this what we should start to expect to see more of in the future? Are guys who are coming from the strong wrestling base and really trying to be a little bit more creative with their stand-up and mixing it in with their wrestling?
Yeah, I think that's generally the evolution of the sport, and that's the way things have been going until now, and will probably continue to go. You can't really be someone who relies solely on one aspect of your game, or you're going to lose. You're going to lose at some point. You need to. I don't want to say be elite at everything, but yeah, you can't just be a wrestler who lacks totally in stand-up. Or you're going to be exposed by someone who keeps it standing, as we saw with Anderson Silva and Chael Sonnen just a week ago. So as far as the top-level fighters that we see in UFC, they're going to have everything. And they're going to be more like, I don't want to say, again, John Jones. He's sui generis. But
along those lines.
It's going to be along the lines of a guy like Chris Weidman's got everything. Yeah, he really does. He's got stand-up that's good. He has submissions, and he has wrestling, and that's gonna be the mixed martial artist future.
So now that we've talked about Chris Weidman and how wonderful he is, and how we'd like to have him over for tea and crumpets, let's talk about that stoppage. And Rosenthal has already come out and made a statement about it on Tap Out Radio. When you saw that stoppage, David, what did you think? What was going through your mind?
Seemed a little late.
Did it seem Did it seem a little late, or did it seem a lot of late?
It seemed obscenely late. Like, Munoz was out. I was watching it on a poor stream, but Munoz took so many extra shots. I don't know how many extra shots and how much longer it went on, but he was basically in a fetal position. And I don't know what Rosenthal was waiting for. But like you said, I think Rosenthal said it was a bad stoppage.
Justin, and Rosenthal came on, like I said, Tap Out Radio, and he said that he reviewed the video when he went home, and he did say that he thought himself that it was a bad stoppage, and that if he had been at home and he had been watching it, he would have also been talking smack about himself. So that's good to see. How encouraging is it for you as a fan to hear that at least one of the top referees goes back and reviews his own work for future reference?
That's why Josh Rosenthal, that's why I think he's the best in the business right now. I think he is, maybe Herb Dean might give him a run for his money, but I think aside from the guys that we usually see in the UFC cage, Rosenthal is consistently being the best. That's why, like, for some reason, I tend to forget mid-fight who's actually reffing, because I'm watching the fight. I'm not watching the ref unless they're right in checking a fighter or if they do something really stupid. When I was watching this stoppage occurring, I was like, holy crap, who was that reffing? I can't believe that person allowed that to happen. And then when I saw the replay and it was Rosenthal, I was like, no way, I can't believe that, the guy that I see as being the best ref in the business, allowing that sort of, I think it was, somebody counted, it was like in the teens of how many unnecessary shots there were.
Yeah. It was quite a few, because Weidman was wailing on him pretty hard.
Yeah, but like you said, for Rosenthal to admit that he was wrong, because I think this is one of the few times I've ever heard. It's the only time that I've heard a ref say that the decision that he made or the actions that he took were wrong. I think for someone to come out there and go ahead and admit the fact that he was wrong, and like you said, for him to actually go back and rewatch it and actually see what people were talking about, I think that speaks volumes to his character and to his dedication to the sport. I mean, Rosenthal's a guy who also, trains in jiu-jitsu and trains in MMA as well. So I think he has a deeper understanding of the sport than a lot of people do. But yeah, I most of the time when you hear a guy be like, oh, hey, Yamasaki, that was bad stopping, it's just like, it's easy for Yamasaki to say, well, you weren't in the cage, you couldn't see what I saw. But then Rosenthal's, putting himself in our perspective and being like, holy shit, if I was watching it on TV, I would say that's a bad stoppage too. And, and that's why he's the best, and he'll continue to be the best, because he knows what he's doing, and he knows how to learn from his mistakes and admit when he's made a mistake.
Right. It is good to, it is, a relief. I wish we would hear about judges doing that shit, but I don't expect that anytime soon.
People start apologizing.
Yes. Start apologizing right now. Just in general, for future fuck-ups.
Stop doing that chop thing.
I love the chop thing. I think it's amazing. We're going to talk about the chop thing when we get off air, because I have some ideas for the chop thing.
Ooh, secret, top secret stuff.
All right, so let's move on. The UFC announced the newest coaches for the Ultimate Fighter. And we all know that we were all clamoring for these two guys to be coaches for the Ultimate Fighter, right? Shane Carwin.
Talk about absolutely shitting the bed on this decision.
Yeah, Shane Carwin and Roy Big Country Nelson. Nobody asked for that.
Could be fun, but Shane Carwin, jeez.
Yeah, I mean the man is coming back from an extremely long layoff. I mean, like 2 years, a year and a half, something like that. 2 back surgeries. And he's fighting a guy, Roy Big Country Nelson, who has proven to be a really great punching bag for most heavyweights. Unless your name is what's his name? Damn it! Shut up!
Unless your name is, what's his name?
Dave Herman. That's what I'm thinking of. Other than that, Roy Big Country Nelson is just this like huge furry mullety punching bag for heavyweights. So, I understand that probably the UFC wants to bring these guys back in, but here's my problem. People really wanted a comeback season, first off. That's what everybody's been talking about. We really want a comeback season. And two, Stephan Bonnar really wanted to coach that against Forrest Griffin, and I thought that was a perfect setup. That's a perfect setup for trying to like kind of regain the interest of people who used to watch Tough, who you've since lost, and they've lost a lot of people's interest in the Ultimate Fighter. Let's be honest, but. And I really don't think that just Forrest Griffin and Stephan Bonnar would save it. I think that it needs to just be burnt to the ground and then rebuilt from the foundation up. But what the hell? Like, what the hell is up with this? I have no interest whatsoever in seeing these two guys as coaches. I don't know. And then what was the other announcement? The other coaches for the UK versus Australia was
Ross Pearson and Soteropoulos,
yes.
With Pearson going back to 155.
I forgot Soteropoulos was even a person. Like, he just didn't...
I like Soteropoulos.
It's not that I didn't like him, but it's been so long since we've seen him. Like, he was like, oh, I even forgot he was in existence. So, he's been gone for so long. You know, I don't know. I feel like the UFC is really dropping the ball on I mean, we keep saying this and broken record ad nauseum, beating a dead horse, whatever you want to say. The Ultimate Fighter is just old, stale, and boring. And these coaching matchups, at least coaching matchups, have kind of somewhat been interesting previously, but now they're just kind of grasping at straws. And to deny Forrest Griffin and Stephan Bonnar the opportunity because they wanted to keep it more with people who were on the rise and possibly getting title shots, you cannot tell me that Shane Carwin's old broken ass and Roy Big Country Nelson, the mullety...
it's an old broken back, not an ass.
Oh, yeah, sorry. His old broken back. And Big Country's mullety punching bag.
He's got the big ass.
He does.
I don't think I'm going to watch it, I got to tell you.
No, and this would be the first time that I've ever not. I mean, I barely watched the season with Brock Lesnar and Junior Dos Santos. And by barely watched, I mean I maybe watched 3 episodes. I did watch this season for the most, I would say 80-85% of it I caught. But yeah. I'm thinking my DVR might use the room for reruns of Criminal Minds. So let me real quick. The fact that the UFC is kind of denying what fans are clamoring for. Have we seen a change in the UFC and the way that they run business? There was a point in time where it seemed like they were really in tune with their fans and what they wanted. Did this Fox deal make them think they're a little bit bigger than what they really are, and they're kind of forgetting who brought them as far as they did?
David, do you want to go first?
You can take it.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I think prior to the Fox deal, specifically when I think probably 2010, early 2011, where even when they were having shows about title fights, they were still selling a good amount of pay-per-views because I think the fan base was so strong. And then I think they was like, okay, well, let's go ahead and reward the fans and start putting some fights on Spike. So we'll put 2 fights on there. And then eventually it's like, okay, well, let's put 4 fights on there, and then we'll put the rest on Facebook. And so now the fans are, getting everything that they want. And the Untether guys that kind of alluded to this and talked about this a little bit yesterday was that, we clamored so much to see all the prelims and that sort of thing, but now we're bitching because the prelims on an FX or an FX or a Fuel card, and it was like, oh, well, why do I want to watch this? These prelims suck. So I think that there's a 2-part to the way the UFC is viewing things now. Is number one, I think they're viewing this like, well, Jesus Christ, no matter what we do, the fans aren't happy. They ask for every prelim, we give them every prelim, and then they bitch about the prelims. It's like, you know what, we no matter what we do, we're not going to make you happy. Number two, I think they probably have distanced themselves from being familiar with the fans, in that they're saying it's like, oh, well, we've done so well. We've gotten this network deal on a popular channel. Those obviously we're doing something right. Maybe they're getting to the point where they're thinking we can't really do any wrong, and then they're making these decisions like Shane Carwin and Roy Nelson as coaches on The Ultimate Fighter. I don't know. I think it goes deeper than just kind of not. I don't think they necessarily don't care what the fans want, because ultimately it's the fans who buy the merchandise, buy the tickets, and buy the pay-per-views. But at the same time, I think they're trying to distance themselves and making their own decisions because, because they just can never seemingly make an MMA fan happy.
Yeah, I mean, we are in general some really bitchy fans. Do you agree with the line of thinking for Justin, David? I mean, do you think that this is a twofold issue? The one, we're really extremely needy and bitchy, and then two, well, mostly we're just needy and bitchy.
Fans are fickle. I think if anything is really to blame, it's probably the Fox relationship. We don't know what's really going on behind the scenes, but it seems that every decision that fans have a big problem with relates to FX or Fox or Fuel. Well, that's what it seems like to me, at least.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. I really wish there was I don't know. I really wish there was a way fans could convey their real true feelings about all of this, and I wish there was a little bit more transparency between the fans and the UFC Fox deal. All right.
Well, I think this just kind of goes to show why Dana White might not necessarily be the best face or the best person to be the head of the UFC. I'm not saying Dana White needs to be ousted as president of the UFC. I don't think it would be necessarily a bad idea for him to kind of take a back seat and let other people start making decisions and let other people start reacting to, what the fans are saying and how the fans are reacting to the UFC's decisions. Because generally when a fighter has a problem with the UFC, or if the fans have an issue with the UFC or a decision they've made, Dana White's very much bullheaded, and it's kind of like, well, you know what, fuck it, this is a decision we made. If you don't like it, well, then screw you. You don't have to buy, blah, blah, blah. He gets extremely defensive.
Yeah.
And I think that turns people off. And, he's not really open to change so much, unless it really benefits him or the UFC. But but in this case, if he was just if someone partnered with Dana White, or if Dana White, went to counseling or just sat on the couch and hugged a pillow and had a good cry or something, then maybe he'd understand that. It was like, look, yes, we're the ultimate customer at this point, and any business will tell you is the customer's generally right, or the customer's always right at least.
Yeah. And
you want to make your customer happy, and right now the UFC, we're kind of straying away from that, and in the long run, it's going to hurt them.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. This is kind of a dangerous little path they're going on. They're almost ostracizing their own fan base, which is not keys to a successful business. All right, let's move on real quick, and we got 20 minutes left, and we got three more things that I want to cover, and one of them has to be Ronda Rousey on the cover of the She has one of the 6 covers for the ESPN body issue. Justin,
standing myself.
Yes, Justin, keep it clean over there. I think she looks incredible. If you haven't seen the pictures, really all you have to do is Google, Ronda Rousey ESPN body issue, and they've released the cover, and I believe she has 2 inside pics as well, either 2 or 3 inside pics. She looks really good. She looks, gorgeous, and she did say that she dropped a little bit of extra weight, probably to make the muscles pop a little bit more in the pictures, and she does. She looks pretty amazing. David, have you seen the pictures?
Well, of course.
I texted to my brother, and I think I might have started a problem. His girlfriend might not like that so much.
Yeah, I'm gonna refrain from commenting too much, but they were good.
Yeah, they're really just.
The pictures, they're very artistic.
Very tastefully done.
They are. They actually are. They are definitely very tastefully done.
No, they're awesome.
She looks.
Too
I didn't
tastefully,
realize
perhaps,
she had
but,
that.
You didn't realize she had what?
I didn't realize she had that Olympic ring tattoo. Like so, like.
I didn't even know she had one. She has an Olympic ring tattoo? Uh-oh, did I lose you guys? Oh, okay.
Hello?
I think that was me.
I'm here.
All right, sorry.
I was looking for a tramp stamp. I didn't see a tramp stamp. That's what I was looking. There may have been an Olympic ring tattoo.
I did not realize that she had a tattoo. I didn't even see it.
Yeah, I think if hold on, if you look at the picture that my friend Katie posted on my Facebook page, because she knows I'm such like a kind of creepy fan.
I'm glad you realized that you're a creepy fan.
At least I can admit it. Maybe it's not even might not even be visible in this pic, but yeah, I think one of the pics that I saw, like. It's almost on her thigh. Like it's like that far down.
Oh, is it the one where she's kind of like jumping or something?
No, it's the one where she's holding her boobs.
Oh, I'm sorry. These are some really well done photos of Ronda Rousey here. Okay, all right. All right, but check them out. ESPN Body Issue. I believe it comes out this week, right? Is it this week or next week?
Justin, come on.
I don't know.
I want to say that it comes out this
I've seen them on the internet. I don't need to buy a magazine.
He got what he wanted already. But she's on the cover.
I thought pictures are on the internet. That's good enough for me.
But does this have any kind of significance for MMA having, Ronda Rousey on the cover of ESPN Body Issue? Do you think that this will actually have any effect whatsoever on the perception of mixed martial arts as a whole?
I don't know. I think I don't know if this necessarily has a lot to do with the fact that she's a mixed martial artist or the fact that she looks good naked. I mean, John Jones was, in one of the issues, and
but he wasn't on the cover. He was never one of the covers. So I think it's something.
Again, he's not a pretty naked white girl.
Oh, that's true. That's true. No, those right in the back of the car with him.
Wow, you don't know what science can do these days.
That's true.
He may want to be. It's fucking crazy if John Jones is like, I want to be a pretty white girl who poses naked.
I mean, it's possible. Science can make it happen. Speaking of science making it happen, there's also, maybe I'll tweet these. There is a series of photos of Chris Cyborg, all like bikinied out, and
does she have a bulge?
No, she looks really good actually. Like there's actually one of them here where I would actually go as far as to say she looks sexy. I mean, and I know
I saw them and they weren't bad, but then you look at her face and you're like, nah, she still looks like Cyborg.
That tattoo on her back though is banging. That is awesome. That's some straight up.
That dragon?
Yeah, that is.
Yeah,
that is pretty badass right there. She doesn't need the rest of those tattoos. That one tattoo right there would have done it. Yeah, but she looks pretty good. Then there's actually a noticeable difference in her in the way that she looks since she stopped juicing. I mean, she doesn't look quite as bulky and manly as she did months ago. And part of that might just be that she's not training, and maybe she's just got a little bit more fat on her than she normally would. But she looks,
or airbrushing that her manly ass features and
airbrushing. Airbrushing is a manly girl's best friend, but she looks pretty good in those. So check them out. Those Globo.com has those. And Globo is Brazilian, so you probably, unless you actually speak Portuguese, you probably will not understand any of it. But you can at least check out the pictures of Christiane Cyborg Santos. All right, so let's quick talk about this, and Justin may not be happy with me because I was actually kind of unhappy with Ronda Rousey about this. But she was interviewed on the red carpet for the release of the ESPN body issue, and the person who was interviewing her was obviously trying to instigate something. He was trying to get her to say something kind of off the wall and wacky, and she just bought into it hook, line, and sinker. Not that I think there'd be a real big backlash on it, but I thought it was just kind of stupid for her to say that, that she would quote unquote beat up Kim Kardashian because she feels like she is not a good role model for her sister. And I'm thinking, so beating up people you don't like is a better role model for your sister? I mean, is that really much better? Her retaliation for what she thinks is wrong is unnecessary violence. And I realize that she's a mixed martial artist, and that's how she makes a living, but you don't hear baseball players saying how they're going to take a bat to somebody's knees because they don't like them. So,
Tanya Harding.
Well, Tanya Harding is gangsta. She wasn't going to lose. But
Nancy Kerrigan, that was fucking crazy situation.
Yeah.
Crazy shit. Ah!
Okay. Why are we?
Why?
But
I'm so wrong. I'm so sorry.
We are awful people.
Oh, it was so awful. But it's been long enough. We can laugh.
We are almost as bad as gypsies. We are almost as awful as they are. Yeah, I have a thing against gypsies.
For those who are interested, by the way, I went ahead and posted the full body shot of Ronda Rousey, where you can actually see the Olympic tattoo. To the FightFans Radio Facebook page.
Oh, okay, good deal. I'm going there right now. And that's
it's a near vaginal tattoo.
It was the big ones, right? The near
vaginal
ones.
Yeah, that's a surprise.
Oh yeah, it's awfully. And she is awfully clean shaven down there. That is a little creepy. I mean, it's obvious that they airbrushed like any kind of like stubble that may or may not have been there, but that is kind of creepy. And I have this whole for women who like shave their vag and like clean like that, and I think it's kind of creepy and whatever. But that is just interesting. She's got even like a little V thing going on. I guess for women it'd be more like a W, right? It's like a W.
Inappropriate.
Oh, I'm sorry. But am I putting too much stock into this Kim Kardashian comment? I mean, really, just like off the bat, it just kind of turned me off. And do you think at this point, there was a comment made on her Facebook page about her possibly spending too much time taking pictures and not enough time training for Sarah Kaufman, who I think will legitimately be a serious problem for her. At least in the stand-up game.
I don't know. I mean, everyone makes fun of the Kardashians. To me, it's fairly harmless. I would almost think that maybe it's almost Ronda's being encouraged to say things like this.
Oh yeah.
To act out and to be dolled up and to make sure her picture's being taken as much as possible because she is the current face of
women's MMA.
Of women's MMA, and it just happens to be a very attractive face. So I think they're trying to push that as much as possible. I thought it was actually pretty funny when she said that the only reason she's famous for sucking dick on camera, which is not far from the truth.
No, it's not. It's not far from the truth. But I don't know. It seemed like she's really enjoying this whole fame thing a little bit too much. I don't mind her being brash because that's kind of what got her where she is. But I would almost agree that she seems to be doing a lot less training, a lot more photo.
I don't know. Every time, again, creepy Justin follows Ronda Rousey on Instagram and constantly posting pics of her training. So.
And do you think?
She does a lot of traveling. She just does a lot of jumping from gym to gym. Was actually in Cody McKenzie's corner in his last fight. So
was she?
Cody McKenzie could have done a little more training.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Cody McKenzie could do a lot more, not being Cody McKenzie.
Yeah. That was an unfair fight.
Yeah, it was.
But yeah, no, she was actually in his corner, and she's been training with the Diaz brothers out at Tracy's camp. So.
Hopefully it's training and not smoking, but
hopefully it's both.
Okay, so okay, maybe I'm just, I don't know, for some reason that really like, and I know
my whole approach to like, any reference to a Kardashian or any sort of celebrity, or like I just kind of shrug and like I really don't care.
Somebody just texted me and they were like, "What's up with the shaved vajayjay conversation?"
Huh? It's a good conversation.
It is. I'm saying. I think it's creepy.
It's a debate. I mean, it's a good debate. People have their issues.
I do. I don't know. Anyway. All right. So tomorrow night. Yeah. Let's just move on from the Shave and JJ conversation. Tomorrow night. We do.
Right into Strikeforce.
We do have. I mean, I feel
talking
like,
about shaved for JJ's.
Yes, I feel like we are headed down that path per se. So might as well.
Let's start talking Strikeforce.
Yes. I don't.
Ultimate shaved matches.
I don't think it's a bad card. I actually really do want to see it. I don't have Showtime anymore, so I'm going to be going over a friend's house to be watching this one. But it's headlined by Luke Rockhold. Finally gets to fight Tim Kennedy. I feel like they've been trying to set up this fight. Oh boy, she just texted me to say she heard me. Oh, Rosita, you know I love you, girl.
Have you seen you saw the advertisements for the Strikeforce card, right?
No, I heard they were really bad though.
It was like Tim Kennedy, fighter, sniper, blah blah blah, and then it's like Luke Rockhold, surfer, champion. two fighters on different paths, and it was like, how in the hell did you like? Sniper versus surfer, that's your build up for this fight. That is fire whoever came up with that immediately. And and then it shows like it's got this picture of like or this video of Tim Kennedy like firing a rifle, and then it's got Luke Rockhold standing there in like an O'Neill full body wetsuit holding a surfboard. And I'm like, what? Like this is very, very WW, like early '90s WWF, where you had like a trash guy fighting a plumber kind of booking.
It's Bob the Trash Collector versus,
or like the Goon. David, you remember the Goon?
Yes.
Yeah, the guy who like wore like it looked like he was wearing like ice skates and dressed as like a hockey player.
Yes. Their product was never as good as the UFC's, but I've definitely seen a decline in the product since Zuffa bought them. So I think that's an interesting thing to know. And I think if anything, it just shows that they're just really trying to run out this Showtime contract and be done with it. So we've got Luke Rockhold versus Tim Kennedy final for the middleweight title. We've got Nate Marquardt versus Tyron Woodley. Tyron Woodley for the vacant welterweight title.
I met Tyron at the fight in DC. He was super nice. Came up and talked to my friend for like and I for like 10 minutes. Just really cool guy.
I met him there too. His head is even bigger in real life though. That is a gargantuan. It's not really his head. It's his forehead. It's like a 6 head. It's very disturbing.
He had a hat on, so I didn't really get a good look.
Oh yeah, no. I thought it was like, I don't know, I thought it was going to eat me or something. I don't know. But yeah, he was a very nice guy. Having said all that, having talked trash about him just now, he's still a very nice guy, and he's facing Nate Marquardt, who's getting his second chance with Zuffa. I think it'll work well for him if he wins his welterweight title, because, like I said, I fully expect Strikeforce to disappear sooner rather than later, and that'll work well for him to segue back into the UFC. We have Hodger Gracie making his 185-pound debut against Keith Jardine. Over under on that fight lasting more than 30 seconds. Anybody?
What's the over under of me giving a shit?
I don't know. That's a good one. I might actually put a bet on that too. And then we have Lorenz Larkin versus Robbie Lawler. How do you have? Well, I guess Lorenz Larkin, he lost to King Mo last, and now he's coming back against Robbie Lawler, who will probably knock Lorenz Larkin back into the 90s.
I don't know. I like Lorenz Larkin in that fight.
Really?
He's got a good wrestling base, which we all know. If you put Robbie Lawler on his back, he is not going to do well.
That's true. He is like quite like a turtle on his back, but I don't know. Robbie Lawler he has so much more experience than Lorenz Larkin, but we'll see. Again, this is tomorrow night, Showtime. I believe 10:00 is when the broadcast starts. The preliminary card, which will be on Showtime Extreme, features Ryan Couture, the son of Randy Couture, versus Joe Duarte. Jason High versus Nate Moore. Jordan Mean.
Jason High, hell yeah.
Jordan Mean versus Tyler Stinson. I think that might actually be a really good fight there. Pat Healy versus Mizuto Hirota. And
they've got great prelims. And Pat Healy, Jason High, Ryan Couture, like awesome.
Yeah, I mean this preliminary card seems kind of boss. And George Masvidal versus Justin Wilcox, and I think that should be a really interesting card. I like Masvidal quite a bit, so but that should be an interesting fight. I think these prelims are actually worth watching. The main card, for title fights, I will watch it definitely. But I
don't have Showtime anymore, so I'm kind of effed.
Yeah, I got rid of Showtime a while ago, but my girl.
It's literally the worst channel you have to pay extra money for.
I don't know about that. I think Showtime, in my personal opinion, I think Showtime has better shows than HBO. I mean, HBO has a couple of really good ones, but I think overall Showtime has more of an abundance of really good shows.
I do like the show that Macy's on. God, what he's the alcoholic. William H. Macy's the alcoholic. And
Shameless.
Yeah. That show is awesome.
I refuse to watch it.
I will give you that.
I refuse to watch it. You want me to tell you why I refuse to watch it?
Why?
I refused to watch it because when they were previewing that show, when they were really trying to pump it up on Showtime back when I had Showtime and I was watching it on a regular basis, and there is a scene where I believe it's one of the younger boys is like about to mess with a cat, and I just don't do that. I mean, I don't do anything that has to do with kids messing with animals. So they lost me. I will never watch it. Never. I don't care how good it gets. It could win a gazillion awards. You know what? Erica will still not watch it. You could give me the box DVD set for my birthday and for Christmas. You know what? I'm giving it away. Just not doing it. I don't support that kind of stuff.
That's rude.
It is rude.
I guess I'll return your Christmas present then.
I'm saying there's plenty of other things that you can get me, though.
No, that was it. That was your only chance.
That was the only thing I was going to get. But I love Dexter. I think Dexter's really good. House of... what is it called? Is it called House of Lies with Don Cheadle is a really, really good series. People really like Californication. Not necessarily something that I watch, but people really like it. Homeland was really good. Weeds has kind of fallen off, but The Tudors was a really good one, and I don't know. I never really got into the HBO ones. But in terms of movies,
you're talking to like a huge Game of Thrones nerd and a guy who watched Entourage as well. So
I can't get into Entourage. It's so dudeish. It's like, and this is coming from a chick who watches MMA, and I like video games, and I like action movies. And Entourage is just like, it's too much testosterone for me. I just can't.
What about Game of Thrones? Have you watched Game of Thrones?
I don't have HBO, so I have never watched Game of Thrones. And I'm not really huge into like medieval fantasy. I am willing to give it a chance, but I'm already kind of on the outs because I really am.
I would actually recommend that, like, because I'm in the middle of, God, we're really off topic now. I'm actually in the middle of reading the books because I didn't want to wait for the third season of the show, right? Because I wanted to see the difference. And the books are like a million times better than the TV show, and I love the TV show.
All right. I mean, you're really pressing hard to do it. I think it's something I would enjoy because I love Spartacus, and everybody was telling me that Spartacus is, once Spartacus was over, that I should give Game of Thrones a try. That it's, similar in terms of the type of show that it is. Not necessarily the subject matter, but that it's got a lot of violence and sex and cussing, and I'm into that kind of stuff. So, I am excited about Spartacus coming back. But anyway, that's Starz, so that doesn't really count towards my Showtime argument. But I can't get into Entourage, man. I really just can't do it. I've tried, and it makes me angry, and I just have to turn the channel. They're like
that show on television returns Sunday night to AMC.
And what show would that be?
Breaking Bad.
Breaking Bad.
All hail the king.
You know what?
Dave, for this, I've never seen one episode of Breaking Bad in my entire life.
I haven't either. It is on
It's on Netflix. Yeah. So.
I'm willing to give it a try. I'm really waiting for Anarchy. I don't know, Sons of Anarchy.
God.
Okay.
Marry me, Erica, right now.
I love
Sons
of Anarchy is amazing. Just for Katie Siegel's character on there, that is the baddest bitch on television right now. She is both the nicest and meanest person simultaneously. That takes some serious psychotic BS to be that kind of person, and she just pulls it off so well.
Boardwalk Empire is on HBO, and that was excellent.
That's what I've heard as well, that it was really good.
Excellent.
But I've never really been one to have HBO, and I don't know why, because Showtime is not great for movies. If you wanted a movie channel and you really want it for the movies and not necessarily the series, HBO has great series as well. But I think probably HBO and Showtime both have a lot of promising series. But when it comes to movies, Showtime is awful. HBO gets them first.
Showtime's really bad with movies.
Yeah, HBO gets them first. HBO gets the better ones. Showtime gets the movies. Like Showtime will get 1,000 words. That movie that came out with Eddie Murphy, I guarantee you. And HBO is going to be like, you know what? No, we're going to pass on that. We're going to get something else.
I feel like Showtime is nothing but a bunch of straight to DVD movies.
It can be at times very much like that. And sometimes that's not a bad thing. Sometimes, you like watching really bad movies. Sometimes I like watching bad movies, but that is just awful. Okay, we are just going over time talking about movies. All right, so let's close up shop. Any closing statements from you guys? Anything you guys want before we close up shop?
I think we covered it.
Yeah, I think we covered it. Justin, anything?
I got nothing.
Ronda Rousey's your future baby mama?
I don't know about that. That might be taking things a little far.
Ronda Rousey gonna be my future baby mama. All right, guys. So you'll be able to catch a replay of this show if you dare even listen to this thing again. We are on Stitcher Radio, which you can download to your cell phone and your tablets, and that is iPhones or Android phones. It works for both of them. It's a really great service. We are also on YouTube. The show will be uploaded to YouTube tonight. We are on iTunes. You'll be able to subscribe to us on iTunes. We're on a bunch of things right now, just trying to make ourselves as accessible as we possibly can. If you have any, suggestions or comments for us, for Fight Fans Radio in general, or just for the show, FanAddicts MMA, feel free to write us an email. You can write us on air at fightfansradio.com. And
if it's a negative, keep it to yourself.
Yeah, if it's a negative, keep it to yourself. I don't want to hear your bullshit. Stop whining.
Bitches.
And no, we won't move to Blog Talk Radio so that everybody sounds like they're calling from prison. What else? We got some really good things coming up next week. Expect a few changes. We will probably be announcing it on our Facebook page. So like us on Facebook, facebook.com/FightFansRadio. Follow us on Twitter at FightFansRadio, at FanAddicts MMA. What else?
Follow me on Twitter.
Follow Justin on Twitter at Titter.
Follow Dave on Twitter.
Follow Dave on Twitter. It's Faux Dave, but it's an amazing account. So follow Dave at Sarah D. Wolf. Follow Justin at Justin Cohey FFR. You can follow me personally, Erica Lewis, at FightFan_Erica. I feel like there was one more thing that I wanted to mention, and I just am spacing on it. Okay, it obviously wasn't that important. But we'll be tweeting some stuff. We'll be having some more giveaways for our show and for Fight Fans Radio. Like I said, we have some really huge things coming up very, very soon here. I would like to thank Finishal's Fantasy Fight League for sponsoring our prediction shows and giving us the opportunity to compete for
thanks a lot, guys, for letting me be a part of that.
For 2 UFC tickets, and I think it's a really great prize, and I think everybody should be participating in that. Feel free to send me or send FanAddicts a Twitter message, and we'll be giving away some entries for their 4th season. Their 3rd season, the registration is closed, but when the 4th season starts up, you'll be able to have a free entry and get a chance to win 2 tickets to a UFC show, including airfare and hotel. So we'll be back again next Friday, same bat time, 5 p.m. Eastern time, same bat channel, right here on Fight Fans Radio. And we'll talk to everybody next week. So I haven't said this in a while, but be safe and keep fighting.